What's up everyone, Master Fox here today. I want to give you guys a quick summary and kind of discussion about what went down at the North American World Championship qualifier. It looks like based on the information that we have with the top 32, PK Fire was definitely the deck to beat, and this isn't too surprising as PK Fire has been doing very well, especially in the tournaments leading up until the North American World Championship qualifier. A lot of people expected the deck to do well, whether they played the deck beforehand or whether they jumped onto the hype train afterwards. The deck was set to do very well, and it did. I don't think anyone was very surprised by it. Here I have a list in Word format of what the top 32 decks were, just in case you guys prefer this format. I'll have an infographic coming up, but basically the breakdown is as follows. We have a majority of Burning Abyss Phantom Knight decks, being 10 out of the top 32, followed by 5 Extra Deck Monarchs, 4 Domain Monarchs, 4 Performa Pal decks, 3 Cosmo decks, 2 Magispector Magician, 2 Odd Eyes Magician, 1 Fire King Cosmo, and 1 BA Monarch deck. If you actually compile all of the different Monarch variants together, they actually total up to 10 matching Burning Abyss Phantom Knight, but it's anyone's call whether or not you want to separate out the different variants of Monarchs and the different variants of Burning Abyss. So that can be up for debate, but the fact of the matter is Burning Abyss is definitely one of the biggest contenders this format, and so is Monarch. What's the most surprising to me about this event actually is that the deck that won everything was Domain Monarchs. If you had told me this before, I would have been very shocked. I didn't make a prediction video about it, but if I had, I would definitely not have said that Domain Monarchs would have won. I would have expected either PK Fire to win the North American qualifiers, or possibly Cosmos in some sort of weird manner. Cosmos is just a deck that, when it does well, it just kind of steamrolls over other decks because of its high damage potential. But otherwise, the deck can kind of flop on itself, and it's a deck that ends up defeating itself more often than not just due to bricks, kind of like Domain Monarchs. But in this event, why do I think Domain Monarchs did so well enough to win the entire event? Well, one of the main factors is the fact that Burning Abyss kind of came back as a major threat and something that a lot of players got behind. And PK Fire, being the big contender in this event, made Domain Monarchs a very good choice because Domain essentially can win you the PK Fire matchup hands down right there if they don't have an out to it. And oftentimes, once you get the Domain lock early enough, there's not much that they can do against you, at least in game 1. And that puts the momentum a lot in your favor for that matchup. And what I expect is at this event, probably most of the players were using PK Fire, and as a result, Domain Monarchs had a very good matchup against that deck. Additionally, Domain Monarch also has a very good matchup against Performa Pal, as well as any other Pendulum-based deck like Magispector Magicians, Odd Eyes Magicians, all those decks, Domain Monarch has a good matchup against. Not to mention the fact that Monarchs in general have a very good matchup against Cosmos, so that's off the table too. The only real matchup that Domain Monarchs struggle with is against the Extra Deck Monarch variant. The problem being the fact that the Extra Deck Monarch variant won't get locked out of the Extra Deck because they will have their own Tribute Summon monsters as well, meaning your Domain lock is very ineffective against them. And add to that the fact that the Extra Deck Monarch deck can basically do anything that your Domain Monarch deck can and more. It means that the matchup is going to be very hard. And oftentimes, if both players draw similarly powerful hands, the Extra Deck Monarch player will come out on top. And also, Extra Deck Monarchs, in my opinion, brick a little bit less, only slightly less though, than Domain Monarch. And so overall, Extra Deck Monarchs have the edge in that matchup. But seeing the top ratios, it's entirely possible that Domain Monarchs wouldn't have run into too many Extra Deck Monarchs, and that's why they were able to make it through, seeing as all of their other matchups are entirely favorable. And additionally, against any rogue deck, almost all rogue decks will use the Extra Deck in some form, and that means Domain Monarch can basically auto-win against the random rogue decks in the early rounds. Overall, I'm pretty shocked that Eric Christensen managed to win the entire event with Domain Monarch, but I guess this means that Domain is probably getting hit, right? I think in the TCG, we'll probably end up following the footsteps of the OCG and hit Domain and Pantheism to 1, although that's probably not the most efficient or best way to hit the deck, really. In my opinion, you should probably ban Ether, and then the entire deck is fine, because Ether hits both Domain Monarchs as well as extra deck Monarchs, and you don't have to hit any more cards. And hitting Pantheism kind of just makes the deck a lot more shotgunny and just based on luck of the draw. And I don't really like that way, although I do entirely understand that Pantheism is a very, very powerful card. Being a draw 2, add a +1 as well, because you get to add the card to your hand. So it's very debatable. I do understand the reasoning behind hitting Pantheism, although I do think that Ether is the most efficient hit. But that's probably a topic for another video. I'll talk about that in the future. As for this topic, I guess that pretty much summarizes everything. Tell me what you guys think in the comments section below. Give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you.